Hey, have you ever had someone bastardize a character you loved and it pissed you off so much that you made a 2-hour-long video tearing it apart? Well, I did, and oh boy, is this one hell of a ride. 3 things before we get into the swing of things. 1. This isn't about liking or disliking Kokichi. It's about debunking the argument that he's objectively poorly written. 2. This video has major spoilers for all 3 Danganronpa games, so watch at your own discretion. 3. Please don't harass Aeris or me. This is not an attack on Aeris' character, so don't make it one. That's all I have to say, so strap yourselves in for a truly despairing experience.
I graduated university in June 2020 with a Bachelor of Creative Industries. My 2 majors? Video games design and creative writing. I also completed all of the classes in the interactive narrative minor as my electives.
What a terrible first impression. Look, I get that you have more experience in this department than most people, but the way you said it comes off more like, I know better than all of you because I went to school for it. I know this isn't about Kokichi, but I couldn't help putting this in here.
I just also have a $100 microphone, video editing software, wide audience, aforementioned university degree, and a corrupted black hole that absorbs all genders that get too close to its gaping maw to amplify my views like a pissed off orangutan to the internet.
What the hell does this have to do with writing characters or character analysis? This is just you flexing the money you have, and it makes you look like an arrogant dickhead who looks down on others who disagree with you. You don't know a character better because of how much money you make. It just means you have a louder voice, and considering I haven't even gotten to the Kokichi points yet, is not a good thing.
Let's grab Kokichi and see what he has. Number 1. Persona. Kokichi does indeed have a persona. He's a conflict starter, he's intelligent and analytical, he behaves completely unhinged towards the others, and enjoys making the mysteries harder for his classmate.
Wait a second.
Oh boy! Kokichi Ouma! It's like Nagito but plus another one!
Oh wow! 2 characters in Danganronpa have the same role? Pfft, never seen that before. But seriously, if you bother to look deeper than the foundation of which both these characters are built upon, you'll know that they're nothing alike. This is pretty standard practice for Danganronpa roles and characters. We have the scary-looking buff student with the really sweet heart, the protagonist with confidence issues, the support character who is the protagonist, so on and so forth. However, despite having the same role, none of these characters are the same. Kokichi and Komaeda play the same act as the antagonist who challenges the main theme of the game, but this is where the similarities end.
But in being the quote-unquote crazy character who makes life harder for everybody else by being a problem, and treating the protagonist like shit during the main story, only to turn around and say, I love you in the end of their free time events.
Oh dear lord, this early in and we're already where Aeris is objectively false. So I'm gonna do this section in order with the pictures first, then I'll touch on Aeris' verbal assassination of both Komaeda and Kokichi. Yeah, somehow Aeris misses the point of both these characters. Also, Kokichi isn't insane, he pretends to be insane because he's a liar, compared to Komaeda who isn't putting on an act for his classmates. That's especially confirmed when he tells you about his diagnosis, but I digress. Both characters orchestrated a situation to get 2 unrelated characters to kill each other. 2 unrelated characters? Mew started the whole plan by trying to kill Kokichi. The only reason Kokichi made this plan in the first place was because of Mew. Gonta comes into the picture because Kokichi needed someone to kill Mew in order to protect his life. He feels that if he were to die before executing his plan, the other students would have no hope of escaping, something Komaeda would never do. Komaeda preyed on someone who was desperate to leave in order for his suicidal plan to work. He started the killing game for his sick version of hope, something Kokichi would never do. Both characters had access to wealths of knowledge the other students did not. You either didn't play V3 or have problems with dementia. Kokichi didn't have knowledge no one else knew of, not in the way Komaeda did. Nagito was given a book straight from Monokuma because he survived Russian roulette on the hardest difficulty, something no one other than him would do. Kokichi didn't go through anything major to get the information he knows. In fact, he didn't have to work for it at all, because the knowledge he gained was public info. The secret to the outside world? It was a motive Monokuma gave to the entire group. All he did was yoink it out of Monokuma's hands and left. The Horse A and Twins B code? Anyone could have found those since they were just written on some random wall in the school. Kokichi just used them to further his plan by adding letters to them. He didn't even know what they were for, just that they were important. The fact that it was a TV show? He had an accurate, educated guess, one that makes sense from his perspective due to the stingy rules and Monokuma's desperation to make the game interesting. Komaeda was literally given all the answers, other than the traitor's identity, to him on a silver platter. This is such a moot point. Both students killed themselves with elaborate plans to get somebody else to die for the murder. Wow, I was joking earlier. You really didn't play V3. Kokichi never made the plan to kill Kaito. The point of it was to get Monokuma to announce the wrong culprit and screw over the game, ending it entirely. The whole crux of his plan was to save everyone. He wanted everyone alive even at the cost of his own life. Also, Kokichi actively told Kaito that he needed to become the Blackened in order for the plan to work, so Kaito was fully aware and supported the plan. At this point, he was hated by the group, so he didn't even expect appreciation if it would have worked. Komaeda found out his classmates and themselves were remnants of despair. That causes major personality shift from willing to die for any ultimate to I will let these cretins kill me for despair, and the realization that he could kill them all to become the ultimate hope. Hell, his final messages say that he wanted a statue of himself erected after the fact. The crux of his whole plan was to murder everyone but the traitor, Chiaki, who wasn't at all aware that she was the culprit and was only in that position because of Komaeda's luck. It almost sounds as if they follow the same structure of their roles, but differ in their methods, which makes them separate characters. Finally, treating the protagonist like shit during the main story, only to turn around and say, I love you, at the end of their free time events. Neither character treated either protagonist like shit. Do you even know what order these events took place? Komaeda was nothing but kind to Hajime throughout the story. Sure, he can get a bit cocky and condescending, but he was never an outright jerk to Hajime up until the 4th chapter, when he finds out about the reserve course. Even then, Komaeda's aborted love confession comes before the final dead room, so he never turned around and said, I love you, after being an asshole. The most he was infuriatingly confusing, which he didn't even intend to do. Even if you want to say that the message Komaeda left behind is an example, there wasn't a complete turnaround anyway. It was more like an apology to Hajime. A half-assed one, but the scene was never meant to be taken as him saying, I love you. Kokichi's a bit more confusing because his intentions are never spelled out for the player, but to say he was a jerk to Shuichi is just too harsh. He was more playful than anything else. He scared Shuichi with some of his actions, but he never treated him like he did with Miu. Kokichi never told on Saihara when he would lie in a trial, unlike when he announced Maki's true ultimate. If anything, he treats Shuichi the best out of the whole cast. As for his free time events, he'd play games and ask Saihara to be part of his army in which he holds in high regard. Wow, he's such a jerk. The only time he was mean towards Saihara was when he pissed Kokichi off by being a hypocrite. Also, he never confessed to Saihara. He didn't even take Saihara's hand at the end, which, by the way, I don't think Shuichi would give a hand of friendship towards someone who he thought treated him like shit.
For one, in terms of design, Nagito has pops of color that make him quite interesting to look at, with contrasting colors. He's decked out in green, associated with luck thanks to the 4-leaf clover. Kokichi is black, white, purple.
And design has no bearing on the objective writing of a character. Design is a good way to get certain attributes of a character without outright saying anything about them, but it isn't needed to have a good character. I will concede that Kokichi doesn't have the most complex design. The outfit itself is wonderful to look at and quite unique, but the colors could use some work. They could have left the black and white scarf to show the back and forth nature of Kokichi and made his main outfit complement that. However, this doesn't have anything to do with who he is, and that's okay. I mean, you'd think Akane is a good, underrated character, and her design is so much worse. It has nothing to do with her talent, and even if the lack of variety was intentional because of her background, it would still fail on that front too. Nothing about her design screamed, poor person to me, nor gymnast. But that doesn't matter, because it had no bearing of what I thought of her. I still thought she was a shit character, but her design wasn't one of the reasons. Also, Komaeda having a meaningful design? What? 1, the green referencing the 4-leaf clover is a stretch. 2, there were many things on his design that have absolutely nothing to do with Nagito's talent nor personality, the most being his hair, which is white due to his illnesses. So the comparison doesn't even make sense. Just say you like one design better than the other.
But if you're taking the mentally ill angle with Kokichi, they literally put him in a straitjacket. Nagito at the very least avoided that.
Like I said earlier, Kokichi isn't mentally ill. He doesn't have any diagnoses that we're aware of, so this is more of a subjective interpretation of his character. In fact, it's a false one, because if you look at the salmon mode of V3, you'll notice there's a major lack of Kokichi being crazy. Kokichi is definitely sound of mind. You can't judge someone's core personality in a high-stress situation like a killing game, especially when Kokichi is trying to pull off the biggest lie he's ever told while losing people he cares about. Let's use Komaeda as an example. No matter what game mode you play, Komaeda's mental state doesn't change at all. During the killing game, he's optimistic because he perceives the situation as bad luck. so that means there must be good luck just around the corner. However, in Island mode, he is constantly in a state of panic because he perceives that situation as good luck, so that means there must be bad luck coming for them. In both modes, he stands firm with his warped version of the world. Kokichi, on the other hand, doesn't have this type of mentality. During Salmon mode, he's just a playful dude who doesn't need to worry about being murdered. His mental state is far healthier because he isn't forcing himself to like something he deeply despises. During the Killing Game, you'll notice that over the course of the chapters, especially chapter 5, he becomes increasingly unstable due to the situation he's in. Now with the prospect that people will die, he becomes paranoid, scared, and feels responsible for what's happening. He abandons his old childish personality for something more sinister in order to protect himself and the group. The TDLR is, Komaida's crazy personality existed before the Killing Game, while Kokichi's crazy personality was created because of the Killing Game. So him being based off a straitjacket is irrelevant.
Nagito's actions in the narrative were never excused and glossed over, nor were they made out to be purely evil. His actions were laid bare for the player to decide whether they were good, evil, or even somewhere in between, which is where I think he lies. His unhinged behavior came from the fact that his brain was literally deteriorating. He had both stage 3 malignant lymphoma and frontotemporal lobe dementia, and he needed literally anything to believe him to give him even the slightest will to exist. His writing portrayed him as intelligent, analytical, and someone you can struggle to empathize with and will never be able to fully do so. And yet, you can still come to understand why he thinks the way he does. His ideology makes sense, bearing in mind what in life he's had to deal with. Kokichi so clearly copies the Nagito formula established before, without copying over any of what made him a compelling or interesting character. Kokichi makes only a few superficial changes in personality, such as being more childish in behavior and the narrative saying that he has some more morality than Nagito, rather than showing us.
Okay, long section, I know, but there was so much. I agree with everything Aeris said about Komaida. Intentions are never painted in a monochrome setting. Every time he does something, it's for the sake of hope in which he perceives as an absolute good. His illness basically giving you an explanation of his actions, but not an excuse. I can only assume that you bring this up because you don't believe Kokichi has these qualities. However, he does. He's never painted as good nor bad. The game portrays his ideology as necessary sometimes, but completely inapplicable in other cases. By the time you see his motive video, it gives you the context to see that Kokichi was never black and white. Just like Komaida, that video gives you an explanation for his actions, but not an excuse.
But the lack of morality and his extreme ideological perspective was what made Nagito interesting. Taking them away and replacing them with, he's childish, prankster, loves his 10 friends, no killing, wound up shooting any interesting characterization that Kokichi could have had in the foot.
What? Are you saying Kokichi had no differing ideology? Seriously? Not only does he have an ideology, he actually has two. The first one is that he's the biggest advocate for lies. He believes lies are better than the truth, and there are many times during the class trials where he explains his belief and why he stands by them. Shuichi even gives them actual thought during the game. It's why he gets so pissed off about Shuichi lying in chapter 4, because Saihara had the opinion that all lies are bad but then decides to lie for a good reason. The second is that logic trumps emotion every time. It's why he perceives Kaito as an idiot and is disappointed when Shuichi starts to believe in Maki with no definitive proof in chapter 2. This ideology works in tandem with his first one. He lies about something in order to force the truth out of others. Due to him believing emotions and bonds don't matter, he's confident that the culprit is lying for their own selfish reasons. The point is, he has an ideology that no one else has. Whether or not you think it's interesting is subjective. There are people who think Komaida's ideology is uninteresting and he's still a well-written character. An ideology doesn't need to be overly complex to be interesting. It just needs to allow the player to ponder about the belief, which I believe Kokichi does with flying colors. Nothing was taken away from Komaida when it comes to Kokichi. He has an ideology that he follows to a high degree and a unique personality. If anything, those other parts of him make him feel more fleshed out. The channel HazeSoul said it best, these good traits that are mentioned recontextualize his character to get you to understand that there's more to him than meets the eye.
Number 2. Agency. Kokichi has a plethora of agency. You see, whenever he wants something done, he makes someone else do it. Usually Gonta or Shuichi, sometimes Miyu. And when he can't do that anymore, he dies!
My heart, it hurts. How can someone be so wrong? Kokichi doesn't rely on anyone but himself. Nowhere in the game does Kokichi put agency on any of these characters except for Chapter 4, which isn't even what Kokichi wanted, but we'll get there. The second chapter, he steals everyone's motor video just to force the class to watch them. Chapter 3, he goes around investigating on his own. He even gives Shuichi the most important pieces of evidence. Chapter 5, he comes up with the whole plan on his own and gives it to Kaito so he knows what to do once he's dead. I think you're mixing up agency and asking for help. Kokichi doesn't get people to do his bidding if he can do it himself. Hell, when you enter his room during Chapter 6, you'll find every piece of evidence from every case. He was actively investigating the school to find out what was going on. He didn't have anyone else do that because he didn't need to round up all the students or carry out a plan while he's dead. He had no need for physical strength to acquire these things, so he never needed assistance. Chapter 4 is the only one where he does have someone do what he wants. Wanna know why? Because if he tried to do it himself, he would die. They literally explain this in the class trial to prove him innocent. Even then, he's the one who came up with the plan and had Gonta carry it out.
Jokes aside, while Kokichi gets a bit of agency, managing to stumble onto important plot points by luck, further illustrating that they should have just made him the super high school level luck rather than all this supreme leader little bastard nonsense, for the role he's meant to play, his agency is all over the place.
It wasn't luck. He was actively investigating on his own. It's why he was in the room in the first place. As for the talent remark, I am one of the people that believes Kokichi didn't lie about his talent, but it would take way too long to explain, so if you want to know what I'm talking about, I'll link it in the description. However, I will say I wish his talent was more prominent.
His actions feel like the story is bending to suit his will to an insulting degree.
When it's after Chapter 3 and the writers suddenly decide out of nowhere to make 2 chapters revolve completely around you and your bullshit. Chapter 1, no one but Kaede and Shuichi do anything. Chapter 2, he's a huge part of it by stealing everyone's motor videos and revealing Maki's talent. Chapter 3, he finds one of the best pieces of evidence by investigating to prove Himiko innocent with his own agency. During this, he was placing letters on the stone outside for everyone to see.
I can suspend my disbelief pretty far. A book that plays God, a VR game that can kill you, a teenage girl being the de facto prime minister, that's all stuff that I can generally believe can indeed happen. But a lot of the stuff that Kokichi does, especially in later chapters, that's where the bullshit he was getting away with was starting to get so unrealistic it was bringing me out of the story. In Chapter 4, he managed to manipulate Gonta, who by this point even he knew Kokichi wasn't to be trusted, and butchered his characterization in order to get him to kill somebody so that Kokichi could survive. They made Gonta act out of character to serve Kokichi, and it's obvious that they couldn't think of another way to get him out of being murdered by Miu.
I'm sorry. You think Kirumi, a literal teenager who was just a maid who somehow got promoted to being Prime Minister of Japan, is more realistic than Kokichi's actions in the whole game? What? Stealing motor videos, lying during a trial, manipulating Monokuma, manipulating Gonta, writing letters on a stone, etc. All that is less realistic than a teenager becoming the Prime Minister of Japan. Really. If only I were just as delusional as you, maybe then I'd understand this argument. Specifically the Gonta thing. You think it was unrealistic because Gonta wouldn't hurt anyone. On a surface level, I agree with you. But Gonta was shown the true outside world by Kokichi. An outside world that was a literal barren wasteland. His friends were killing each other for no reason. Also, butchering his character? What the hell are you talking about? At the end of Chapter 4, Gonta spells out his motives clearly. He states that inside was hell and outside was hell. What would be the point in surviving if everyone was going to die when they eventually escape anyway? He believed in the mercy killing because he didn't want his friends to experience the memories he had. The absolute despair he felt looking at it. This doesn't break character at all. In fact, it's very much in line with it. I'll say it again. You believe that Kirumi Tojo, a teenager who becomes Prime Minister, is more realistic than this. Unfucking believable.
Which would have been a more interesting Chapter 4, don't at me.
No, it wouldn't be. The best part of Chapter 4 is the emotional devastation of having to prove that Kokichi is telling the worst truth imaginable. It's supposed to show his point that not everyone wants to believe in a truth because the truth can be much worse than a lie. That entire trial is Shuichi going against his own friends to further the truth. You have to prove Kokichi is right. In fact, this whole trial is about Kokichi's ideology being proven true, or it at least has its legs to stand on. Hell, without Kokichi's plan, we would have never gotten the masterpiece that is the momentous clash between Kaito and Kokichi's ideals that have been building up over time. Actually, now that I think about it, killing Kokichi in Chapter 4 would ruin the build-up of the animosity between Kaito and Kokichi. All that waiting only for Kokichi to drop dead would halt whatever development there was for both characters. There is so much more to a trial than how difficult it would be to solve or how intelligent the culprit is. Which, by the way, Mew would absolutely fumble the bag because she's a moron with everything except inventing. By Mew being the actual culprit and Kokichi dying, we wouldn't get those amazing character moments and instead get a run-of-the-mill Danganronpa trial. Plus, the whole point of Kokichi telling the truth was because Shuichi pissed him off by being a hypocrite. He told them who the culprit was because he wanted to take the interesting part away to prove his point.
And in Chapter 5, Kokichi is not only holding Kaito hostage, but he is holding the plot hostage. And after that mess of a trial, Kokichi's role isn't really brought up that much in the final trial, nor anything he actually did.
Yep, because that was the point of his plan. Holding Kaito hostage was to make the group less motivated to resist Kokichi. Kaito took the role of Kaede and gave everyone hope of escaping. Keeping Kaito hostage would leave everyone clueless on what to do. With no one to motivate the rest of the group, they won't try and stop Kokichi. That part of Chapter 5 was supposed to halt the plot, because Kokichi is trying to stop the killing game. After he shows the outside world to everyone, they all become so depressed they can barely get out of bed or eat breakfast. They think it's pointless to leave, so they give up trying to stop the mastermind, under the impression that it won't be worth killing Kokichi over that wasteland Earth. There would be no one to go back to. It's why Tsumugi plants the flashback light in the cafeteria. She was trying to get people to do something so a murder would happen. It's why she manipulated Maki into trying to kill Kokichi. She was attempting to get the plot rolling so the audience wouldn't get bored. Kokichi doesn't want anything else to happen because living an unfulfilling life is better than dying for nothing. Speaking of that flashback light Tsumugi planted, that was brought up in the final trial, meaning Kokichi had something to do with it. But not only did he show up in the trial, the only way Shuichi even found half the things he did was because of Kokichi's not a will letter or blueprints that he made. This is literally the chapter that we have access to his room where we find the motive video and his lab. If you say Kokichi had nothing to do with Chapter 6, then you have to say the same about Komaeda, because they had about the same amount of involvement.
Nothing at all suggests he should be smart enough to solve these mysteries. He just knows because...
You don't need an explanation as to why a character is intelligent. Mew is smart with inventing. Are you going to say it's unrealistic she made the electro hammer and the electro bomb because the game didn't explain why she's smart? No. Plus, what information did he have that he would need god-level intelligence to understand? Kokichi is an observant character. It's how he knows about the twins B and horse A. He ran into them while investigating the school. He knows when people are lying because he notices small things about them. Due to this, he's able to catch on to things more quickly. It's how he was able to tell Mew was going to kill him. He's intelligent and observant. You don't need a backstory or an explanation to have a character like this. What happened to Show Don't Tell? The only two things I can think of that would pertain to this point Aeris is making is his knowledge that Danganronpa was a game show, and him telling the group the context behind the flashback lights. For the first point, all you need to do is pay attention to the inconsistencies around you, and ask them questions. Why is it being recorded? Why is Monokuma so stingy about the rules? Why does the trial need to be interesting? That last question even put to the test by giving Monokuma a deal. He reuses the motive from the last chapter, and in return, Kokichi would make things more interesting. For the second point, you don't need to be Kyoko smart to figure all this out. All Kokichi did was give the flashback lights more thought than everyone else. Also, Shuichi's whole arc was learning to face the truth, so it would make sense that he would want to ignore it as much as possible. This isn't as impossible as you think it is.
Byakuya and Nagito were rich and lonely dicks with enough time on their hands to go read intriguing files. Kokichi isn't that, even though he clearly needed to be to make sense.
Excuse me? Okay, so it is true that Byakuya being a rich boy with an influential family helped in getting hands on top secret files. But Komaeda? What files did he get that he needed money? The only thing he got was the book Monokuma gave to him for free because he survived Russian roulette. Kokichi never got anything that required money or a game that risked his life. Everything he had was public knowledge. He just decided to give it more thought than everyone else. You know, because he's smart and observant. I already explained this earlier, so I'm not going to here, but this is so stupid and downright false.
Oh, Kokichi is just such a big monster dog galaxy brain individual that he already knew it would come up, and he knew the mastermind and the reality of the killing game and stuck his...
Like I said earlier, Kokichi is an observant person. It isn't a stretch to say he was able to get the general idea of what was happening. Also, he didn't know the mastermind. Where did you get that? Where in the entire game did it say that Kokichi knew the mastermind's identity? All he knew was that there was an audience watching because of an educated guess. Actually, now going through the game again for this video, Kokichi outright says, "I don't know," when asked by Kaito. That's how I know you're lying through your teeth.
Number 3. Motive. This is where Kokichi really starts to fall apart. Everyone thinks his motive is really good, right? I even asked what everyone thought his motive was, and overwhelmingly I was told, end the killing game. And that's fine. Pretty boring. Every character wants this in one form or another, but it's fine. There's just one issue. It's not a motive. It's a goal. Kokichi has no motive at all. A goal is what your character wants to achieve, and a motive is why they want to achieve their goal. Ask yourself this. Why does Kokichi want to end the killing game? An answer probably didn't come to mind immediately, and for those who did come up with a motive, the motive was probably, it's the right thing to do. But what makes for a good person may not make for a good character.
He has a motive. It's called wanting as many people alive as possible and hating murder. In his motive video, it says that Kokichi hates the idea of killing. His belief is that killing people is the worst thing someone could do. It's why he hates Maki so much. In his eyes, it goes against that sole belief. That is his motive. Is it particularly complex? No, it isn't. It's pretty run-of-the-mill, actually. But what makes him so compelling is the methods he uses to further his beliefs.
His goal is basic, his actions don't serve his goal, his motive is almost non-existent, and his actions do not serve that either.
Alright, let's go through these one by one. 1. Goal is basic. Who cares? Kaede's goals are basic, but you seem to like her. A basic goal doesn't mean bad character writing. Haven't you heard of, it's not the destination but the journey? 2. Actions don't serve his goal. Beginning of chapter 2, he tries to tell them that doing what Kaede did is a bad idea. AKA, he tries to tell the group that there was a reason Kaede's method didn't work, but no one listened. He instead steals everyone's motive videos so they can watch them all to figure out who is most likely going to kill whom. 3. Motive non-existent. Like I said, it's get as many people alive out as possible. 4. Actions don't serve his motives. Most things he does is for the group. Why does he have a villain persona? So that everyone would have a common enemy that felt easier to take down. If everyone hates the same person, they're less likely to think about murdering each other. That's what happened in chapter 5. They all left to find Kokichi instead of killing each other.
A character having no motive means they have no ideology. No ideology means no method of action. No method of action is a death sentence for what little you might have. Personality, goals, wants, fears, connections, conflicts, it's all meaningless.
I've already debunked both of these claims. His ideology is that lies are a necessary evil and logic trumps emotion. His method of action is his villain persona. Using that persona gave everyone a common enemy so they work with each other and not against each other. However, I do want to clarify something. I just said that Kokichi tries to unite the group by using his villain persona. But isn't that what Kaede was doing? Hell, I said earlier that Kokichi tried to convince the group not to continue with Kaede's plan. That sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? Well, here's the thing. Kokichi's attempt of unification isn't the same as Kaede. Kaede tried to motivate the group into acting against the mastermind. She rounded everyone up to find an exit only to fail every time. Monokuma allowed them to alleviate their hopes only to crush them with the despairing reality that there is no escape. In the end, the mastermind let them believe in teamwork until it became a nuisance and came up with a motive to tear them apart. Basically, Kaede outwardly showcased what her plan was, and in return, the mastermind was able to strike down what she was doing every step of the way. However, Kokichi became the villain in the group. This was done to manipulate the students as well as the mastermind into doing what he needed them to. By being hated, it makes the mastermind think he's just some random wildcard that plays by his own rules. They have no idea what he's planning by doing this, and so they can't strike down the plan as easily. The point of the persona is so everyone can have a common enemy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Point being, Kaede's unification was about camaraderie, and Kokichi's unification was about alliance. That's the difference.
Number 4. Wants and fears. Here's another segment where Kokichi falls apart, but not quite so badly. Kokichi's wants are basic and existent. He wants to end the killing game. Nothing he does actually lines up with this want, but he has one want.
Anything he actually set out to do that would have aided his goal was marred by the fact he wouldn't communicate to the others what he was doing. Maybe. Perhaps it would have helped his plan if he just talked with everyone. But it's almost like Kokichi can be wrong sometimes. It's almost like he has flaws. Plus, if you bother to read the dialogue from the prologue and chapter 1 of the game, you'll notice that everyone gangs up on him and assumes the worst. They would twist his words and interpret them as if he were the villain. So he gave up on the communication method and tried more extreme measures. It doesn't matter. Not only that, but he clearly trusted Shuichi and Gonta to some degree. His plans relied entirely on failed communication and making people hate him in a killing game where they might try to kill him. This is a doozy. So you want Kokichi to break character, ignore his person to everyone so he could do things the right way? Why do you think his plan didn't work? It was because he didn't do it exactly as he should have, because Kokichi's human and can be wrong. 2. He trusts that Shuichi isn't gonna throw someone under the bus to save himself. Doesn't mean he trusts him with his plan. Gonta was more like a friend to just hang out with. You'll see Kokichi and Gonta in free time events because he enjoys his company. Plus, Gonta would be more of a liability to his plan than to actually aid him, due to his ignorant personality. Also, for that last sentence, yeah, getting everyone to hate him was his plan. In his mind, they would be less inclined to kill each other. That's the point of making himself a reasonable enemy. Kokichi isn't as selfish as you think he is. He does most of what he does for the group. He just has questionable methods.
But he has no real fears. He doesn't fear dying. He doesn't fear being alone. He doesn't fear being despised by all of his classmates. He doesn't even seem to fear the idea that the killing game could continue. Which, if his want is to end it, then his fear should be that. I guess he fears being considered boring, but I'm not an ingenuity of God and an ooh soft Demby who never did anything wrong because I'm afraid to be boring.
So, if this information is not spoon-fed to you, it's done poorly? Seriously? He doesn't have fears? Did you seriously fall for one of his lies? I can only assume so because you flashed up the screenshot of Kokichi saying he doesn't care about Gonta, which was a lie. His expression before Gonta died was an authentic reaction, further proven by the sprites that had never been used before that moment. He's terrified of losing the one person he cared about, the one person that didn't treat him like a villain even if that's what he wanted. His massive lie after that was a desperate attempt to keep his persona alive and well. The fact that you actually believed him shows that you didn't bother trying to get to know this character. Another fear is being forgotten. You didn't forget about the whole boring comments, but you refused to look at the deeper meaning. Kokichi makes a point to keep Shuichi thinking about him because he doesn't want him to forget about him. At the end of the game, he tells Kaito, "At least I wasn't boring, right?" Because being uninteresting and forgotten was one of his worst fears. By the way, he does fear the killing game not ending. Why do you think Chapter 5 went the way it did? Plus, when Maki had a crossbow against his head, his first thought is, you're gonna start the killing game again. He also fears trusting others. At the end of his free time events, Shuichi holds out his hand as an offer of friendship. Kokichi hesitates and in the end declines the offer because he's scared of getting too close. He wants people close, but he doesn't trust them enough. It's why he's hanging out with Gonta as friends 1 minute, but willing to use them to do his bidding later. So, he fears losing people he cares about, trusting others, the killing game continuing, and being forgotten. I'm not sure how you overlooked all of this except for one, which, ironically, is pretty much spoon-fed to you.
Number 5. Conflicts and connections. Kokichi is no stranger to conflict. Most major conflicts in the game are indeed his fault. It's hard to remove Kokichi from the story and have the same story. So, that means he's good in this department, right? No. No, he isn't. Every conflict that happens is a result of his hubris and believing only his solution of going it alone and won't rely on others is the way to stop the killing game.
Hey, this is me coming in post-editing here. This is unscripted, by the way, so sorry for the mistakes. I just wanted to rebuttal the verbal claim Aeris makes about Kokichi's hubris, because I don't mention it in my original script, which is a mistake I was supposed to, and I didn't. Basically, all I'm here to say is, why does that matter? That is literally just part of his personality. You just don't like his personality. Just say that. This is not a problem with bad writing. I know you try to clarify this in the whole written bits, which I get to right after this clip, but this still isn't a negative. A personality trait isn't a negative unless it's a contradiction to another personality trait, which it isn't. So I don't even understand why this is a criticism in the first place. Why do you think Chapter 4 went the way it did? His hubris got in the way because he believed he was the key to actually getting everyone out alive, which is why he couldn't die in Chapter 4, which is why he got Gonta to kill. And it's why Chapter 5 didn't go the way he wanted. His hubris believed that he would actively end the killing game with his plan, which obviously didn't work. But I'll get on to his whole not working thing in the next clip. That's all I have to say here. Goodbye. The writing does not capitalize on the fact that Kokichi is in the wrong and that he won't achieve his goal by doing it alone the way he is. It paints him as right in the end. No, the narrative doesn't paint him as right. In fact, it paints him as wrong. Every character is constantly saying how horrible he is and how he can't be trusted. His end plan didn't even work because he didn't communicate with anyone. His own distrust caused everyone else to be extra suspicious of him, making any plans he made an instant failure. The only time the narrative says he's in the right is when Shuichi tries to backtrack and help Kokichi's plan, or he's helping Kokichi prove Gonta as the murderer. The first one is because he realizes what Kokichi's true intentions were, and for the second, it was pure logic. Once the 5th trial finished, the class was split on their opinions of him. Kaito says himself he wasn't sure if Ouma was just lying or telling the truth. Shuichi falls in the middle. He doesn't believe Kokichi is good or bad. Not every post-Chapter 3 conflict needs to be Kokichi sticking his dick where it doesn't belong. So you're asking for him to be irrelevant? How does this make him a better character? Plus, you could say the same for Komaeda. He shouldn't have been getting himself involved in other people's business just to further the plot. But that is a dumbass point and doesn't make him a bad character. So why are you saying this for Kokichi?
In the end, his solutions involve getting Miu and Gonta killed directly, and indirectly also result in Ryoma and Kirumi dying.
Holy shit, you have no idea what you're talking about. First of all, he had no choice but to kill Miu because she was going to kill him. What was he supposed to do, let himself die? That would not only go against his character, but dying would stop his plans altogether. It's why he did what he did. He couldn't kill Miu, so he made someone else do it. Also, since the meet not only encouraged everyone to share the motive videos, which resulted in Ryoma becoming so depressed he no longer wished to live, but also ensured that there were fewer potential witnesses to Kurumi's crime, which nobody wound up seeing at all. What? Did you play the game? The motive videos were already planted before everyone woke up that morning, meaning Kokichi had no say in who saw their videos. In fact, no one wanted to see their videos because of Kokichi. Ryoma blackmailed Maki so he could get his motive video to see if he had anything to live for. His motive had nothing to do with Kokichi's plan, and even if it did encourage him, why are you blaming Kokichi for something he couldn't control? Don't you dare blame him for someone's death because of a decision made by someone else. Kokichi did not tell him or even imply to do that. The whole point of the meeting was to see who had the best reason to leave and keep an eye on them, but due to no one cooperating, it didn't go exactly to plan. Also, he had no idea Kirumi had plans in the first place because he wasn't aware that she saw her own motive video. You're just lying at this point.
And it also results in him and Kaito dying.
Oh, come on! That plan wasn't made to kill Kaito! It was Shuichi who actually fucked up the plan because he didn't trust Kokichi and thought it was made out of malice. He was trying to get Monokuma to call a false verdict, so no one else, including Kaito, should die. But because he has flaws and didn't go about it in the best way, his plan failed and the game continued. God, I've never been more angry.
Half of the chapter's murders wouldn't have happened if he just shut up and cooperated with everybody. All he did was accelerate conflict.
I want to beat my head into a wall. The character that got 4 to 6 people killed has the goal end the killing game, and apparently wants to do this with as few deaths as possible. Are you fucking kidding me? I cannot believe you're blaming him for deaths he had nothing to do with. I already explained the Kirumi bullshit. As for Gonta, his hand was forced because Mew was going to kill him. He had no fucking choice. Even if you want to say, well, why didn't Kokichi decide to run? Run where? All Mew needed to do was touch him and he would become paralyzed. The place was a box. Even if he ran into someone, they would never take Kokichi's word over literally anyone else. Not even the argument, why didn't he just stick by someone the whole time works? Remember what happened with Kaito? Speaking of which, he was never supposed to die because Kokichi expected his plan to succeed. Succeeding would keep everyone else alive. But because it failed, Kaito died in the process. I feel like I'm talking to a fucking baby right now. Another thing, you want him to lose one of his major fears, which you complain that he didn't have, because you have a problem with how he did it? You're asking him to be rid of his flaws because you disagree with them. That is fucking ridiculous and would make him a terrible character.
He wants to end the killing game and will never kill, but uses loopholes to kill once Mew and Gonta outlive their usefulness for them. He's an intelligent, ever-evolving master of the game who wants to save everybody, until he fails to change tactics when one is clearly not working and continuously puts everyone not only at odds against him, but at each other, lowering their odds of survival.
Oh my god, Mew was trying to fucking kill him. How many times do I have to say this? He had no fucking choice. I'd already explained the point of his villain persona. Also, what do you mean he repeated his plan? He's tried countless different things to end it. Chapter 1, he was on Kaede's side trying to motivate everyone to get through the tunnel to the exit. Chapter 2, he tried to explain why the group was folding the Monokuma and tried to make the motive videos lose their power by having a viewing party. Which, I just remembered, Kaito says everyone should have looked at the motive videos, by the way. Chapter 3, he made the whole class be wary of Maki because she was an assassin in a killing game. Chapter 4, he had an unexpected bump in the road by having Mew try to kill him. Finally, Chapter 5, he decided showing everyone the outside so they would see that killing each other was for nothing, making them lose motivation to leave. I'm so fucking tired of this video. How am I not even 20 minutes in?
Stolen persona.
Yeah, remember how Komaeda was just so playful throughout DR2? Remember how he lied to everyone about his intentions? Remember how he wanted no one to die? Oh, remember how he threatened to kill Hajime in his free time events only to say he was lying? Remember how he thought the killing game was just awful and wanted to end it? No? Interesting. It's almost like he is nothing like Kokichi. Interesting.
Unclear wants and fears, ever-changing relationships that are forgotten when the narrative needs them to be, and overall being a complete unstable mess, they fail to include the one thing that every other character has. Yes, even Hifumi. Yes, even Teru Teru. Yes, even Haijitoa. Humanity. Kokichi Ouma has no humanity as a character, despite the fact the game obviously wants you to view him as such. He lacks the core elements of a human being, but not in a well-written way like Junko, Nagito, or Peko, where they're replaced with a compelling, relevant, and ultimately still anthropomorphic theme. Junko's flesh is indeed human. Her emotions and desires, whilst completely unconventional, showcase that she is, fundamentally, human. Nagito's flesh is indeed human. His ideology about hope and the joy that he can experience and dispense with its power, while completely unconventional, showcase that he is, fundamentally, human. Peko's flesh is indeed human. She does not see herself as such due to her upbringing, but the care she takes in those around her is still, fundamentally, human. Kokichi completely lacks a humanizing element. He is just an anthropomorph of Shuichi's opposing theme. He's a cartoon villain, a generic YA dystopian villain, vague and mysterious to avoid actually having to flesh out his character. He isn't human, which is, I'm sure we can all agree, where Danganronpa characters are at their best. Where even past all of the theatrics, the smoke and mirrors, there's a human underneath it. But not with Kokichi.
What are you talking about? He's not human when he cries out to Gonta, pleading to not leave him alone? He's not human when he sacrifices himself for everyone else? He isn't human when he tells Kaito that he has to lie to himself to survive? That he's clearly just a kid dealing with an immense amount of pressure? He isn't a clear-cut character. You aren't supposed to understand him like Komaeda. Not everything he thinks or believes are given to the player because he's someone that you have to read through the lies to really get to the meat of him. Hell, the reason most people like him is because he's relatable. We've all lied to ourselves at one point or another, and Kokichi is the epitome of that. The dramatic lies he tells are just an obvious desperation to fool the group. He over-exaggerated his own claims just in order to believe his own lies. He has humanity. You just don't want to look for it.
And if you're going to argue, well, Kokichi is a liar, so of course we never know his true ideology and desires. My dear, did you forget somebody? Or are you just pretending that you forgot?
Oh no, I never forgot. Okay, so I'll be skipping the majority of this part of the video, mainly because I actually agree with most of Aeris says about Angie. I'll just talk about the points that take a jab at Kokichi.
Angie's speech serves her ideology. She isn't just saying, lol, Gonta, go kidnap everyone, and then he just does that.
A bit of a misrepresentation of events here. Gonta didn't just kidnap everyone because Kokichi told him to. Kokichi disguised his plan as a way for Gonta to show off his bugs to everyone. He basically just lied to him to further his own agenda. Stop pretending Gonta is the dumbest thing alive.
She recognizes that being openly awful to everybody would only hurt her plans, and they've also done her no wrong to justify acting badly. It's better to resolve her conflicts with diplomacy since she's looking to convert others. Had Kyo not slammed a sword into the back of her neck, she'd have likely managed a student council majority by chapter 4 and actually succeeded in stopping the killing game.
Alright, this is where the Angie stuff becomes a bit much. I like Angie, I really do, but saying that she would have succeeded at ending the killing game with her student council stuff is a huge stretch, especially since only 3 people were technically on her side. Tenko was there to protect Himiko, and Tsumugi was the mastermind, so she was just indulging Angie. While she did attempt to add some serenity to the group, it ended up causing conflict between the student council and the rest, which I don't mind at all. If it were handled better, I would have enjoyed it. However, saying this conflict starter of a group would end the killing game is a beggar's belief. Kokichi's plan was used by Shuichi at the end of the game when none of them voted, the only difference being Shuichi's success because of the one thing he had that Kokichi didn't, everyone's trust. So it wasn't that Kokichi had the wrong idea, but rather his paranoia stopped his plan's potential by not relying on anyone but himself. You know, his agency.
Oh look, Angie did physical things that drove the plot, and more than just riding on a rock in the garden. Agreeing to help take down Monokuma in chapter 1? Oh, look at that. Yes. The setup of the student council? Yes. The organization of the Necronomicon ritual? Yes. The wax effigies, Himiko's magic show, her own marriage to Shuichi? Yes, 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 yes!
Okay, so Kokichi did try to stop Monokuma in the beginning, but no one believed him. He had major roles to play in both Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 that had something to do with either the motives or the plot. The stuff you're bringing up about Angie is irrelevant and doesn't do what you're trying to argue. Angie helping Himiko with the magic show? What the hell does that have to do with her ideology or her determination to end the killing game? It doesn't. It was just something she was a part of. At least when Kokichi's on screen, it most likely has something to do with the story.
But she performs Kokichi's talent better than he does!
Pale-skinned and presumably has a dick, so he's not subject to misogyny and colorism, which makes fans think he's better than he actually is. This has nothing to do with his character, nor why people like him. Stop making stupid excuses like this. Doesn't do shit until Chapter 4 when he starts to control the entire plot. I've explained multiple times that he has a lot of involvement in every chapter but Chapter 1. Has no character outside of being a liar, and a liar aspect is simultaneously overwritten and underdeveloped. Again, I've explained the deeper parts of him that you fail to acknowledge. Komaeda clone that fans refuse to acknowledge as a Komaeda clone. You're ignorant if you believe this. Utilize fascist shock imagery to make his initial impact? Oh goody, controversy! This is exactly how I wanted to start my YouTube career. Also, if the quality sounds different, I had to re-record this. Anyway, before I delve into the drama, I want to touch on something I found interesting about this specific point. Aeris, what does this have to do with Kokichi's writing? Last time I checked, this hat only shows up once in the game and was drawn in his splash art. Are you trying to say Kokichi is Nazi-coded? Or are you just putting this in here as an extra slight towards him despite this point lacking in relevance? I think that's what this is. So, I want to talk about this as condensed and coherent as possible, considering how popular this debate is. First, I want to confirm this. People have tried to defend the cap by saying it's actually based on Japanese military caps, and while they are almost identical, the skull in the middle of Kokichi's cap design is only found on the SS Nazi caps used in World War II. Of course, this is speculation since I don't believe Kodaka himself ever confirmed this. So, for the sake of Aeris' point, and visual indicators, his cap is most likely based off of a Nazi cap. However, that's all it is, inspiration. The symbols on Kokichi's cap are not the same ones on the Nazi cap. They're just similar. The bird is no longer a bird, there's a significant lack of swastikas, and the skull, as much as it is still a skull, is clearly a different design, meaning there is nothing on this hat that promotes or showcases fascism whatsoever. I would understand the outrage if the cap was a direct copy or even had any sort of Nazi emblem still remaining, but it doesn't. People say, just edit the hat if you want to draw it, but the cap has already been altered. There is nothing fascist about this cap, and it honestly astonishes me that this is even an argument at all. Besides, he's the ultimate supreme leader. His outfit is going to resemble a dictator. Hey, at least I can speak for everyone when I say we can sleep knowing this doesn't turn into a very offensive character trait that is a constant throughout the game. Right, Aeris? So to conclude, no, Kokichi wasn't fascist shock imagery. Didn't even lead anything despite being ultimate supreme leader. There is a whole post I mentioned earlier in the description talking about his leadership role in the game. Go check it out if you want more context for my argument.
Number 3. Motive. I did criticize Kokichi for having a bad goal and no motive. Angie has a similar goal, stop the killing game. Where the two differ is that stop the killing game as a goal feels like a natural part of Angie's ideology and is aided by her actions, which all serve this purpose.
Kokichi's goal doesn't feel like a natural part of his character? If you look at him on the surface, then I totally agree with you. But this is exactly where you find his motive video in Chapter 6. It helps you reevaluate your perspective on him. Once you find out he's vehemently against murder, suddenly his goals and actions make sense. Also, before you say that this is proving Aeris' point that Kokichi was written to be sympathetic, notice how I said reevaluate and not redeem. Anyway, I digress. My point is that Kokichi hated killing, so he hated the killing game. Therefore, his goal was to stop the killing by ending the game. That isn't a natural part of his character?
Angie's religious fanaticism gives her an edge over Kokichi because it gives her a pre-built motive and ideology to work from. It's compelling in that it's neither good nor evil. It's morally grey and up to the audience to decide if she is indeed on the right path of thinking, if her goal is noble but her methods are horrible, if her methods are good but serve a terrible goal, or if she truly is just selfish. Her character prompts thought. Maybe it is best to give in and put your faith in a higher power in a horrible situation like this, even if you don't really feel their presence. Maybe it's better to fight against the person promoting this. Maybe you shouldn't take sides until you get a better idea of the big picture and wait to play your hand.
This is actually an intriguing idea. It's something that no other game touched on and would most definitely bring an interesting discussion to the table. Here's my issue. You're bringing this up in a video where you're trying to prove Kokichi is a poorly written character. With this section, I can only assume that you think Angie is better constructed. This is where I disagree, and it isn't because I don't like Angie. I do actually like her. She's one of my favorite characters from V3. My problem stems from the fact that everything Aeris mentioned is just wishful thinking. It sounds good because it's an interesting baseline for a character, but that intrigue never came into fruition. In fact, it was a huge missed opportunity. The questions about whether or not a god is something to believe in during a killing game, bad actions for good intentions, or even manipulating the group for her own end goals, none of this is truly completely realized in the game. In fact, it was horribly cut short by Angie's quick departure in Chapter 3. Therefore, Angie is an unfinished character who has a major missed potential and ended up being one of the most hated characters in Danganronpa, then one of the most thought-provoking characters. So, after all that, can you really say an unfinished opportunity is better than a character fully realized? Objectively, that is.
She has the markings of a protagonist. She's logical, charismatic, and fully capable of leading the group, all qualities previous protagonists have utilized as part of their characters. And those same qualities make wonderful foils to Shuichi and also make her an excellent rival. For while Shuichi is indeed a logical thinker, he is held back by his emotions. While Shuichi is charismatic, he is held back by his anxiety. Angie is not held back by those things. The things holding her back are her lack of negative emotions and her over-enthusiasm. And she presents an interesting dilemma too. You cannot prove that God does not exist, but it's also hard to prove that he does too. It's a truth that Shuichi will never be able to prove, and a lie that Shuichi will never be able to disprove.
Now that is a very cool idea. I would have loved to see that in the game. It's too bad they never did this and it's never brought up in the game and instead they do nothing with it, making it bad writing. Let me put it this way. If Angie was well written, I wouldn't sit here yearning for what could have been. It just would have been. Besides, I think you're misunderstanding Kokichi's role in V3. Kokichi is not Shuichi's foil, he's Kaito's foil. Shuichi is just the mediator. Let me explain. Kaito is a cooperative, likable person who chooses to believe in his friends no matter what. He follows his gut feelings and believes that will bring him to the right answer. We see this happening in Chapter 2 when he defends Maki and turns out to be right. Despite him not being the smartest person ever, he really is quite dense at times, it's his optimistic personality and beliefs in others that makes him who he is. Kokichi, on the other hand, is an uncooperative, childish person who doesn't put merit in belief at all and thinks anyone who does is an idiot. He goes off cold hard facts of a case and is willing to do anything just to get his way, whether they're good or bad. He doesn't trust in the bonds between people and chooses to believe that they will inevitably betray their so-called friends. It's why he's so paranoid and most likely why he knew Mew was going to kill him. We see this happening in Chapter 4. No matter how much you believe in Gonta, it didn't change the fact that he was the true culprit. And you can't just rely on your gut instinct. In fact, the reason Chapter 4 is so compelling is because we get to see the two foils of the game clashing their beliefs. One who believes in trust and one who only trusts in fact. Shuichi is sandwiched between them. He is someone who believes in his friends but also understands to focus on facts. He is a mediator. So yeah, Angie would have been a much better foil to Shuichi than Kokichi is, but that wasn't the role he was originally playing in the first place.
The writing is so scattershot. It's creating a message at conflict with itself. Kokichi does all of these horrible things, and then the narrative tries to pull, oh, he was a good guy all along, at the very end. For a writer like Kadaka, that can't be a mistake. Angie, on the other hand, despite the problematic representation of Polynesian people, does feel like a completed character with a motive, wants and fears, a persona, conflicts, and an ideology that drives her thoughts and actions. She feels like a completed character, and I still think she should have been Shuichi's rival, not Kokichi.
Yeah, you completely missed the point. Also, he's supposed to be confusing. He's supposed to be scattered because you're not supposed to take him at face value. The game never said Kokichi was the good guy all along. All the motor video does is give you more context behind who he is. I said this before, HazeSoul said it best. This scene recontextualizes his character, not redeems it.
Does feel like a completed character with a motive, wants and fears, a persona, conflicts, and an ideology that drives her thoughts and actions.
No, she is not a completed character. She has the groundwork for a possible good character. Everything you were saying about her ideology and interesting conflicts are not realized in the actual game. If you want to talk about someone dying and never being relevant again, Angie is the person to look at, not Kokichi. She's missed potential, the opposite of a completed character.
However, we do have one more major point to address. What if Kokichi is intentionally written to be a bag of lies? Is Kokichi intended as a character to be evil and surrounded by lies and never to discover what's hidden deep inside? Are the lies the point? Because if they are, there's another character his superior that wishes to have her turn in the ring with him.
No, but I'll indulge.
popular belief, I tried to meet Kokichi halfway and tried to get his character. I thought, well, he's completely broken from the standpoint of the game itself, but maybe his bonus content will give him the much-needed context he should have. I mean, he only had a majority of the screen time to impress me and failed spectacularly, but even Sonya gets a bit better when you look through her free time events. Spoilers, he got worse! Time that could have been spent dedicated to fleshing out Kokichi's perspective on life where the game failed to do so, was instead used to play games with Shuichi, threaten his life, and traumatize himself into Shuichi's memory. The game clearly keeps trying to enforce him as the pure liar, which after like 15 minutes becomes like, I get it!
Free time events don't have to be deep or meaningful to a character. Sure, I will say that it was a missed opportunity to talk about himself, but in a way, that's exactly what I expect from Kokichi's free time events. Kokichi's free time events are showing that he just wants to be a kid and have fun. He doesn't want to care about a killing game, he doesn't want to waste time talking about himself, he just wants to have fun. Kokichi's a kid that just wants to be a kid. Why does he have to be deeper than that? He doesn't, and not having a deep-rooted past and not talking about his philosophy doesn't make him a bad character. Also, you did not give him a chance considering everything you said in the first part.
Now, I value honesty and truth really highly, and I completely despise lies. That is part of my natural code. I prefer the harsh truth to a beautiful lie. So, naturally, I just hate Kokichi from the start, purely because he only tells lies, and I find that reprehensible, right?
Not right.
There is another liar, whom despite all odds, became my absolute favorite character from the game that she starred in. I'm talking about Miyoiruma. Ah, gotcha, didn't I? No, I didn't. Everyone knows Kirumi's my favorite now. I'm talking about Celeste Ludenberg, the liar character, done correctly. A pure evil character, done correctly.
Down the rabbit hole we go! I want to die.
Not only does she manage to keep a consistent ideology, but I have a desire to listen to the lies she says.
Okay, so in order to give Aeris' point a chance, I was gonna look through all of Celeste's free time events to see if maybe Celeste became this great liar Aeris says she is. However, I ended up being quite busy, so I never got to see most of it myself. Luckily, my amazing friend came in clutch and watched them for me, so thanks so much for enduring this pain with me, man. Anyways, just as I suspected, Celeste has a total of 0 in-depth lies. Nowhere except for her name, birthplace, and a couple tiny falsehoods does she have any lies whatsoever. All she talks about is her gambling life and how she has a stupid amount of luck to win. She lies twice in the actual game, not counting her name, and 4 times in her free time events, counting her name. 6 times. What an amazing liar character. Even if you find Kokichi's lying annoying or uninteresting, at least he's lying.
It's not like Kokichi where he just lies because the plot demands he be a foil to Shuichi, and hey, truth, lies, reality, fiction, it's all connected!
So, I'm adding this part in because I want to clarify something Aeris mentioned here, specifically the theme of the game, the main motif, truth and lies. Kokichi's supposed to represent lies and Shuichi's supposed to represent truth, right? If that's the case, why did I state earlier that Kokichi isn't the main foil to Shuichi? Well, that reason is because Shuichi doesn't represent the truth. Not fully. In fact, Kaito is the one who represents this theme. While Kokichi is more obvious due to his compulsive lying, Kaito is always the one pushing Shuichi to find the truth no matter what. He doesn't believe in lying for a good reason. Not until chapter 5. Kokichi's the polar opposite. He believes that lies are what run the world, truth is a cruel reality that can only be found under a veil of lies. This is why they clash so much, and it's why it's so cathartic to see them working together. Kokichi learns to believe in Kaito, and Kaito learns to tell lies for a good reason. So if Kaito and Kokichi represent the main theme, what is Shuichi there for? He's there to be a healthy balance between both believing and reality. This game isn't just about truth versus lies, it's about truth and lies. A happy medium between both. That's what Shuichi represents.
One thing I did neglect to mention in the previous script is also whether a character is able to stand on their own. As in, would this character function if their foils and relationships were changed or removed altogether? Angie would be able to stand on her own. Celeste would be able to stand on her own. Kokichi would not. And again, I do not wish to attack anybody who likes Kokichi Ouma, but if you're planning to just yell in the comments about how I don't get his character, please try to save our time and find something else to watch.
Save my time and explain your point.
However, there is one instance where the FTEs are completely useless. Ouma's free time events tell you nothing about who he is that the game didn't, and I worry that the uselessness of his free time events influenced not only the rest of the game, but the entire rest of the series retroactively.
They aren't useless. They are there to show you that he's just a kid, and he just wants to be a kid. He doesn't have a deep story, he doesn't want to talk about himself, he just wants to have fun with the person he likes the most, Shuichi. Plus, most of his characterization is in the main game. I don't remember what video it was, but in a review of V3 that I found, he makes a point that the free time events, unlike the other two games, aren't necessary to really understand these characters, since everyone, or a couple, gets their point across in the main game. Kokichi talks about his ideology and many trials, he fights with Kaito to prove himself right, he lies about his feelings to keep his villain persona, and there are many other aspects that I haven't mentioned. His free time events is just hanging out with him and having fun, because that's all Kokichi wants to do. You are actively learning about that facet of his personality, which, ironically, is the only thing we don't see in-game.
There's not much point trying to analyze Ouma's free time events. There's literally nothing to analyze that isn't part of the main game.
Exactly!
But if you can't take time aside to develop your main rival in a non-stressful context where you're actually developing the other characters like this, you might have a shitty rival. Togami and Komaeda even manage to get fleshed out in these events. Sonya even gets a bit of fleshing out.
Shuichi is not Kokichi's rival. If anything, Kokichi tries to become allies with him. Anyway, Byakuya, Komaeda, and Sonya all needed their free time events in order to get fleshed out at all. For the first two, besides their ideology, you didn't really know anything about them and had no time to just chill with them. Both of them had their weird philosophies that would motivate them throughout the game, but if you skip the free time events, you never know why they act the way they do. Sonya desperately needed the fleshing out. She was downright boring throughout the second game, and free time events gave her that little bit of depth that she needed. Kokichi never had these issues because everything you needed to know was a part of the main game, which is a good thing. It's good that you don't need to sift through a bunch of side content just to understand his character. Unlike the three people you mentioned, Kokichi's actions were explained in Chapter 6. You learned about his ideology, why he advocates for lies, his logic over emotion ideals, etc. And in the side game, you get to see a personality trait that is important to the character, but not needed to understand him at a base level. This isn't the negative that you think it is.
Our Queen of Liars gets a segment all to herself where she wins by default.
By default, my favorite way to win.
Celeste does more with less when it comes to her lying. She doesn't tell her lie, get a reaction from Naegi, and then go, tee-hee, yes, I lied. Or did I? Yep, I did lie. Or did I? This makes me compelling, right? She just told her lie. Naegi might call her out if he caught it, in which case she affirms her lie is indeed the truth, and moves on to the next topic, whether it's another lie or something else.
Okay, dear lord, Kokichi is not compelling because of his compulsive lying. All that is just extra fluff on his character. He's compelling because of the lengths he's willing to go to stand by his beliefs, and the unorthodox methods he uses. Someone who is just as complex as his maze of lies. Also, I'll say again, Celeste barely lies. Where is the intrigue?
And this is what separates Celeste's lying from Kokichi's lying. Kokichi, when it comes to his lies, is severely overwritten. If you removed all of the tee-hee, I lied, or did I dialogue, you'd cut down his dialogue by at least 10%, and in truth, nothing fundamental would actually change by removing all of this meaningless flavor text.
So, this is both correct and incorrect, and in neither case is it a bad thing. Aeris is right about his core personality not changing if you got rid of his lying. It's mainly due to the fact that there is more to him than just lying. He's childish, determined, selfless, and is willing to do anything to achieve his goals, even if it means going to extremes. If it helps the rest of the group long term, then he'll do it. Being able to strip one part away and not having it change much is good. It means he's got more to offer than that one thing. However, pretending like no part of his personality would be changed is incorrect. While lying isn't all he is, it's still a facet of his personality. Getting rid of it will strip him of something noticeable. He can stand on his own thanks to his other personality traits, but you'd be taking a pretty big chunk away from him.
In fact, it would enhance Kokichi's character. Well, if he had one.
What? Huh? Didn't you just say earlier that nothing would change about Kokichi if you got rid of his lying? If he didn't have any character whatsoever, then losing the lying would be a very significant change. It's either he has no character so getting rid of his lying basically means he doesn't exist, or the lying is so pointless it doesn't change who he is. You can't have both.
Celeste? She cuts the shit and just tells her lies. Kokichi ensures the player will not be shocked at all when he lies by telegraphing it for the player, which also makes him being the one behind Gonta and Miu's murder lose all its impact. It's not shocking that he would turn to murder because he's been an asshole from the very beginning and has not stopped being an asshole for the whole game.
Holy shit. Just say you don't like his personality. I will say this again. Celeste lies a total of 6 times before Chapter 3, which is pathetic. At least Kokichi is lying. Also, Kokichi's lies are not one-to-one. His lies aren't, tell lie, then say it was a lie. His lies are more like, I'll say a truth, then I'll say it's a lie, but then I'll backtrack and tell another lie, pretending that's the real truth. They are a maze. You never really know which statement is a lie unless you have background knowledge of what he's talking about. Actually, there's a video breaking down Kokichi's character that explained his lying much better than me.
The way he lies is, oh, like, I don't know, random example. I'm feeling hungry for pancakes today. Oh, I'm feeling hungry for waffles today. Maybe me feeling hungry for pancakes was a lie. Maybe me feeling hungry for waffles was a lie. No, just kidding, I was feeling hungry for pancakes. No, just kidding, I wasn't feeling hungry for pancakes. No, maybe I could go for some egg and cheese sandwich right now. Or maybe that was a lie. Who knows?
Moving on, your explanation as to why the impact in Chapter 4 failed is horrendous. First of all, the shocker part of Chapter 4 wasn't that Kokichi manipulated Gonta. It was that Gonta murdered Miu. Kaito literally makes this argument in the trial and it's brushed over because it wasn't shocking. Besides, Kokichi didn't orchestrate this plan because he's evil. He did it because he was going to die by Miu's hands. Why do you think he would just let himself die? That's some Komaida shit he would never do.
Granted, it's not super shocking that Celeste would turn to murder either, but that's more from her presence, her polite mask, and the slips of said mask, rather than spelling out for everybody that she couldn't be trusted in any context.
That was the point, Aeris. Kokichi wore a villain persona because he wanted everyone to hate him, so they wouldn't trust him. He's spelling it out because he isn't actually dangerous. I know that sounds weird, but let me explain. In Chapter 1, he tries to help Kaede motivate the group into escaping. Chapter 2, he stole everyone's motive videos so they know who could have the biggest motivations for murder, making it so everyone could keep watch on that one person. Chapter 3, he tried to keep everyone scared of Maki due to her talent because he thought she was dangerous to them. Not only that, but he actively helped the investigation. Chapter 5, he came up with a crazy and convoluted plan in order to stop the killing game in its entirety. Chapter 4 is the only chapter that he's an active threat to the group, and it's only because he was being targeted for murder. Throughout the entire game, everything he does is for the sake of the group, even if that means they hate him. Him being upfront about how untrustworthy he is isn't a slip of his mask. It is his mask. He's lying about being a threat to everyone so they would believe he's the mastermind, when in actuality, he has no plans to harm them at all. Actually, this proves that it's Celeste who fumbles in this category, specifically in Chapter 3, because unlike Kokichi, she wasn't supposed to be obvious. Kokichi made himself obvious in order to trick the group. In other words, Kokichi succeeded in lying, and Celeste didn't.
In fact, there were contexts where the group did completely trust her, non-begrudgingly. For example, reporting on her run-in with Chihiro when they went to see Mondo on the night of their murder.
What? No one during that entire investigation went, I wonder if Celeste is telling the truth. They never begrudgingly trusted her. They just took her at her words because why would she lie in a situation where she could die? Now, some of you are probably asking, but Goose, what if she was the culprit? What if she was just lying? Here's my answer. Anyone could be lying to save their ass. Celeste isn't exclusive in that regard. In fact, Makoto not questioning her words and treating her like everyone else with the possibility of lying shows that she completely fails at being someone you should be wary of. If she were this mastermind of a liar, Makoto would absolutely be questioning everything she has to say, even if nothing connects her to the murder. Kokichi, on the other hand, is exactly that. He lies so much that his alibis have to be proven by someone else. He lies about being the culprit so everyone has to break down the murder scene in order to prove him wrong. Kokichi actually lies about stuff like that so no one believes what he says. That is the sign of a successful liar.
The free time events characterize Celeste incredibly well in a non-stressful context when it's not solve a murder or die, or fail to get away with murder and die.
What the hell do you think Kokichi's free time events are for? It was for this exact reason. His free time events were to show his more childlike personality, where he's not trying to be this evil maniac and instead shows him in a low-stress environment, just enjoying playing games with Shuichi. Wait a minute. You just said that Celeste's free time events were about seeing who Celeste actually is in a stress-free environment. And looking back at my friend's notes about her free time events, oh my god. Celeste doesn't even talk about her real past, and instead just talks about the gambling game she's won. No deep backstory, no strange philosophy, it's just her chatting with Makoto about her interests. So you were complaining earlier that Kokichi doesn't have any deep backstory that gives him depth, and instead just plays game with Shuichi. But when Celeste is just having fun recounting past games with Makoto, you use this exact reason Kokichi has no backstory in his free time events. This is just hypocrisy.
She does have an initial fascination with Makoto as the super high school level good luck. A reason to be invested with him, and to talk to him if he wants to talk to her. She's invested in him because she wants to pit her luck against his in a game to see who comes out on top. It's her honest interest in the game that initially draws her in.
Shuichi is the only person that gives Ouma's lies any thought. He's the only one who sifts through hundreds of Ouma's statements just to find the real truth. He cares about Kokichi enough to give him that time of day. Kokichi plays games with Saihara because he appreciates that genuine intrigue and interest. That is the want that pulls Kokichi towards Shuichi. You can take that however you please, but my point is that Kokichi isn't dragging Shuichi into these playful situations for no reason. It's because Shuichi takes him seriously and he finds the back and forth fun.
Throughout her events, Celeste recounts a few of her gambling victories to Makoto, and his honest interest in hearing about them meshes well with her interest to stroke her ego. It's a win-win situation, which is why despite the fact that Makoto doesn't trust Celeste much at all, the events still feel productive and friendly. He is a friendly person, and Celeste finds that in his luck very appealing. Makoto often does say that he doesn't understand Celeste in the earlier events, but it's because he doesn't yet know the full picture of her. Sure, the puzzle contains thousands of pieces, but Celeste isn't eating half of the pieces when Makoto looks at the box. With enough perseverance, the puzzle will come together. Kokichi's end goal doesn't exist at the end of his school mode, and Shuichi just declares that understanding his lies isn't the goal, and he should just not bother understanding Kokichi at all. Which is really fucking lazy writing. If I went to any of my university classes and the goal was not understanding a fucking thing, I'd be wanting my money back.
Kokichi's school mode is him learning to grow closer to Shuichi. Throughout the whole thing, Kokichi does nothing but lie and mess with him. During all these events together, Shuichi debates the truth that Kokichi might be telling and is pulled in by the constant mystery that is Kokichi Ouma. Ouma's ending is a parallel to his free time events in the killing game. The notable difference is that he actively takes Shuichi's hand at the end, showing that he's willing to open up and be vulnerable with the one person that has shown interest in him. In the killing game, he declines the handshake because of his paranoia and fear of getting too close to people, knowing that if he gets attached, he'll care too much if they die. I'm not exactly sure what Aeris is trying to critique when it comes to Kokichi's school mode, but hopefully I've proven that the events aren't as pointless than what's being implied.
We learn at the end of Celeste's events that she ranks the people around her between A and F, but haven't discovered anyone worthy of fitting ranks A or B. It's something that shows that Celeste is indeed a huge nerd, but can also be translated as her outright claiming her friendship system. F rank is called F rank because she hates you so much she wants your friends to press F to pay respects at your funeral. E rank is people she dislikes, D rank is strangers and acquaintances, and C rank is presumably friends. And while my next statement is going to be allonormative, B rank can be presumed as a partner, and A rank might be the person she decides to marry. Acting as though her ranking system is really inaccessible gives her a further air of superiority, matching up with her character. I don't pull the B and A ranking being romantic partners out of my ass either. Celeste's Trigger Happy Heart event is strong evidence that B and A are romantic rankings, when she wonders if Makoto would stay by her side once she's achieved everything she wants to do with her life, and if he could rank up further with her. The best conclusion to this event is, indeed, Makoto affirming that he would stay by her side. The end of the school mode is also where he affirms he will stay by her side if she achieves her dream, and even afterwards. The events show Celeste is selfish, but she doesn't cause mayhem for the sake of mayhem. It all has to do with her underlying goal beneath it, obtaining a European castle and all of her vampire butlers. Free time events to main game, her underlying goal remains the same, and it's easy to see her both enlisting Makoto's help in an earnest way and committing actual murder to achieve her dream. They both line up with the fact that she has a reduced or even non-existent sense of empathy, but she's not devoid of sense or the capacity to actually socialize. and Makoto reacts to her in a natural way. Stunned by her victories, dubious when she says she's of French-German origin, fearful when she says she's killed the people that she actually despises. It's all very natural.
So, I know I made you listen to all of that, but I do have a reason. It's to ask what about this freedom event that Kokichi lacks. I know Aeris said that Celeste doesn't cause mayhem for mayhem's sake, but I've already explained why Kokichi isn't that bare bones. Other than that, I have no idea what's missing. The lack of explanation in these points are what's really dragging this video down. So, if any of you can figure that out, I would love to know.
So, both liars had a giant overall plan that they attempted to execute to reach their own goals. Both acted like dicks to their classmates at least one point. That is where their similarities end. Kokichi's plan makes absolutely no fucking sense, while Celeste's plan is actually structurally sound. Even if the precise methods to her murder are inadequately executed, her plan had a start, middle, and end that felt like she had indeed been planning this out for a while, and the money was just the motivation she needed to set it into motion.
Oh boy, Celeste's plan was structurally sound. Yeah, it was about as structurally sound as a Jenga tower. Jokes aside, Celeste's plan was terrible in more ways than one. First of all, she got Hifumi to make the suit that was practically useless. You couldn't bend at the waist nor take it off or on at all, or at least not on the culprit's own. Second, she tried to frame Hiro, who is dumb as bricks and in no way would come up with such a complicated murder plan. Third, by having everyone breaking into groups together, it let everyone except for Hiro have an alibi. Once you realize that Hiro is stupid, it leaves only Celeste who could commit the murders. So she made a suit where it would be impossible to make a clean kill in, framed the dumbest person there, and gave everyone an alibi, leaving her as the only option. How is this plan structurally sound at all? Kokichi's plan causes confusion to not only the player, not only the characters, but Monokuma as well. There were no obvious holes in his plan, and even though there were only 2 people in the hangar, it left everyone in a constant back and forth, debating who killed who.
Questions that Celeste probably would have asked? Let's set up one important thing. How Celeste knew that murdering somebody and beating the class trial would get her the money. Well, that's pretty easy. She saw about 10 million yen in bill form right in front of her eyes. I promise this will be relevant later. Question 1. Who would make a good murder victim? Kirigiri is too smart to fall for any deception and is probably too strong to attack. Naegi is too nice and would weigh on even Celeste's conscience. Hina and Ogami would flatten Celeste in a fight. Togami thinks too much like Celeste to fall for her stunts. Fukawa hates everyone around her and would be more effort than it's worth. Sho would carve Celeste a new face. While Hagakure is a moron, he is more suitable framing material, especially considering the motive.
I wouldn't say that all of those people are out of the question. In fact, I think it would show how much of an amazing manipulator she was if she were able to outsmart one of the smarter characters. Manipulating someone like Byakuya to make him look like the culprit would make her terrifying, especially since Byakuya would be extra untrusted considering everything he said in the second trial. But no, in-game, she isn't this amazing liar, so she went the easy route and framed Hiro.
Which I'll remind you, is the first time that Celeste has been portrayed as explicitly untrustworthy. She didn't run around the academy yelling, "Hello everybody! Hon, I'm a liar! Look at this obvious parallel I have with Kyoko Kirigiri and how my rich girl status mirrors Togami, which is Nagi's parallel!" At least all of her ships are healthier than Sayoma. Hell, her telling the truth was what got Mondo caught for his crime. She acted like just another player in the killing game. Sure, her title was always hovering over her, but surprisingly for someone called the Queen of Liars, it was more subtle. She absolutely could have survived if she didn't slam a hammer into Yamada's skull.
I would agree with you if lying wasn't a major part of Kokichi's character and was only present in the main game. Except it isn't, and we see him lying at every opportunity he gets to mess with people. He sees it as a game and finds it fun. Celeste doesn't find lying fun. She uses it to get what she wants only. Of course she wouldn't run around saying she's a liar, because that isn't who she is. This isn't the game telling you he's untrustworthy because, like I explained earlier, he didn't have any sort of harmful intentions. So really, the game did the exact opposite. It told everyone to hate him and distrust him, but the game showed that he was willing to sacrifice his life in exchange for everyone else's. Celeste is different. She was actually an evil character, willing to kill others for her selfish motives. Therefore, the game didn't tell us this. Also, no, she wouldn't have. While Yamada was the nail in the coffin for her, she would have been caught no matter what, especially since everything she tried to frame Hiro for could easily be debunked, leaving only her and Yamada. Not only that, but Hifumi was the one who killed Taka, so Celeste would have no hope of getting that money if she didn't kill Hifumi. So actually, you're right, she would have survived, but it wasn't because she was so smart she almost didn't get caught. She just would have been lucky she wasn't the murderer. So she'll live, but she won't win.
Now, let's go over Kokichi's plan. This plan is so bad, guys. Holy shit. Alright, so first, we need to set up a point for this plan to actually begin because it is both incredibly convoluted and yet really bare bones. I'll be generous and say it's around the time that he commissioned Miu for the Electro Hammers, so about chapter 4. First off, it's not made clear at this point what exactly Kokichi's plan is. Is it to escape with everybody? Then why is he being secretive and not working with everybody else? Like, yeah, the mastermind is watching, but if he's creating EMP bombs and hammers, then he already knows the mastermind is watching their every move through some means, so there's no point to being secretive. The mastermind knows what you're doing anyway.
My god, you know nothing about him. Why would someone who doesn't trust anybody let people in on what he's planning? Plus, that would go against what he said in chapter 2, where no one should work together because they'll all be punished for doing so in the end. Also, why would we know his motives? We don't learn that until the end of the 5th trial when we find out Kaito lives. Then we find out more when we see his motive video. If you were to set up his exact motivation beforehand, it would ruin the surprise in the 5th chapter. If we knew he wanted to get everyone out alive, it would have been so obvious that Kaito was in that HazeSoul. If he weren't, then Kokichi would have been an evil liar like Celeste, who lies to get what he wants. However, he believes that lies can be used for a good purpose, so lying for a bad purpose would completely contradict his characters and not in a good way. Another thing, he did know that the mastermind was watching, and he did stuff to combat that. The script he gave Kaito was most likely kept on him at all times, so the mastermind wouldn't be able to take it and read it. The mountain of blueprints in his room is where he hid the blueprints for the bug vac. It was a precaution in case the mastermind would sneak into his room to steal it so it couldn't be made. The twins' B-code was hidden in his room in a secret envelope Shuichi found. He did all this to keep it as much of a secret as possible. Not only that, during chapter 5, the mastermind couldn't keep watch. The HazeSouls were ordered to keep eyes on Monokuma, the only camera that could get up close and personal.
May as well reluctantly trust people rather than cut yourself off from everyone around you like a mega paranoid numpty and still get spied on by the mastermind. Sure, Kaide died when she tried to get everyone to work together, but Kokichi only saw the end result. Kaide attempted murder and died for it. He completely ignores why she did the murder, to protect everybody else.
Yeah, he knows that, but he saw that her method failed, which is why he tried different ways to go about it. He isn't like Kaito where he's just gonna take Kaede's role in hopes of it working again. Kokichi tried Kaede's idea in the 1st chapter, then once he saw her failed attempt, he took a different approach. He's a lot more calculated than you think he is. He doesn't put merit on emotions or bonds, but rather the objective truth of the matter. Everything you're saying about his methods, how he should have spoken to people about it, is completely out of character for him. He doesn't act like Kaito, he doesn't act like Kaede, he acts like Kokichi. These aren't problems with bad character writing. You just don't like the character he's written as, meaning you dislike him subjectively. You said in part 1 that you don't dislike Kokichi because he's a bad person, but rather because he's poorly written. But everything you have stated about him is either factually incorrect or subjective feelings about his methods. Nothing so far has been objective, and it speaks volumes in this particular section. Anyway, let's talk about that meme you made. I'm gonna gather up everybody and take the fight to the mastermind. Even if the mastermind is among us, they can't fight all of us. Oh yes, and that worked splendidly before with Kaede. Her intentions don't matter if she still died in the end. This is what Kokichi was talking about in chapter 2. Also, it's not like Kaito's plan worked anyway since people were still dropping like flies throughout the game. I rode on a rock in the garden over the course of 2 weeks and bullied one of our most powerful assets to get the mastermind until she wanted to kill me, then killed her. Are you talking about Miu? The same Miu that orchestrated a murder that would have ended in Kokichi's death? The same Miu that we were told couldn't be talked out of trying to murder someone? That Miu? Sure, her talent could have been helpful, but it isn't Kokichi's fault she isn't alive anymore. He shouldn't have to feel guilty for defending himself. Not saying he shouldn't feel guilty about dragging Gonta into it, but he shouldn't feel bad for trying to save his own life.
The rest of the motos weren't under the threat of everyone dies if nobody kills anybody. Kokichi just immediately assumes, well, Kaede fucked up under stress and the threat of us all getting murdered, so her way of doing things must be absolute bullshit and we all need to be completely divided.
What other conclusion would he come to? Why is that a bad way of looking at things? He saw Kaede try her plan, she murdered someone and got punished as a result. Why would he think, maybe she was just doing it the wrong way? That isn't like him at all. Like I said, he's an analytical person that doesn't put much merit into trust and bonds. So seeing the one person who has been trying to lead the group out of their despair only to fall into that trap herself, he is absolutely going to think her method didn't work. He's instead going to think, well shit, Kaede tried to get us to work together and be friends, so the mastermind punished her by having a kill or everyone dies motive. That means we'll be punished if we have camaraderie. I don't understand why this isn't an acceptable way to look at the outcome. The only reason Kaito sees it the way you want Kokichi to see it is because Kaito is firm in believing that friendship can solve anything. They can defeat the mastermind by believing in each other. However, they are both wrong and they both fail. Kaito fails in Chapter 4 when he tried to believe in Gonta, and Kokichi failed with his plan in Chapter 5. When Shuichi takes both ideas and puts them together, it is successful. The whole message of this game is basically Shuichi having a healthy balance between Kaito and Kokichi's ideals.
For a character that's supposed to be intelligent, analytical, and pragmatic, this way of looking at Kaide's goal is ridiculously short-sighted. Is it to make everyone see the outside world so they give up and die? He doesn't know the outside world is fucked at this stage of the game. Nobody does, which makes the Electro Hammers a weird thing to request.
Wait, I thought we were talking about Chapter 2. Hold on. He commissioned the Electro Hammers because it was part of his plan to take down the Exosouls that Monokuma controls. You said earlier that we can assume his plan came into motion around the beginning of Chapter 4, so it isn't at all weird for him to get Mew to make them. I don't think you understand the timeline of events. For your second point, him being analytical and intelligent doesn't mean he can't be wrong or make mistakes. It just means he's a step ahead of everyone else. Like I said, he's a paranoid person, so that will most likely get in the way of logical thinking. He's still human, Aeris. He isn't going to make the right decision every time.
It feels like they were just set up for a later plot point that makes no sense for Kokichi to be taking at this stage of the game. It's literally just so Mew can slot in as the Chapter 4 victim because they couldn't figure out an actually intelligent way to kill her off.
I'm so confused. What stage of the game do you think he asked Mew to make them? It certainly wasn't Chapter 1 or 2. Maybe you can make an argument for Chapter 3, but when she got the blueprints from Kokichi, she was already saying that there was no use trying to fight Monokuma. So we can assume that she had her murder plan planned out already. So the best candidate for when this took place is after Trial 3, but before Chapter 4. Do you think he asked for them earlier? But you said in Part 1 that he started his plan in Chapter 4. If that's when everything was set into motion, why would he start before then? Do you have any idea what you're even talking about?
Like, maybe Kokichi and Gonta learn a way to switch avatars and Mew accidentally kills Gonta instead, but she wants to escape so she keeps her mouth shut. Kokichi figures out a way to get Mew to accidentally kill herself with the virtual world. All I'm saying is that Gonta listens to Kokichi and murders Mew is really shitty for all three characters. It makes Kokichi look reliant on others to do his dirty work rather than looking for alternative paths and using his fucking brain. It makes Mew look like a complete imbecile who didn't plan in the event of witnesses to a crime. And it makes Gonta look like he would actually hurt somebody, which I don't buy for a second.
Huh? I'm trying so hard to understand what Aeris is talking about. All three characters are ruined because of Kokichi's self-defense? What? Mew's character wasn't made to have any sort of development. She was more like the comic relief that makes a small impact, which she did by inventing the electro hammers and electro bombs. Plus, you're missing the character that did get development during this chapter, Kaito. That is why Chapter 4 is so important. If it didn't happen, then Kaito and Shuichi wouldn't have their slight falling out, and Kaito would still be ignorant enough to just believe to get through trials. I don't even think you understand Gonta. the only thing that he was going to be violent towards were non-human entities, and only if he would protect the human characters. He wouldn't hurt Miu, and definitely wouldn't kill her. Here's the thing. He did what he did because he was trying to protect them. Think about it like this. Every trial so far, except for the third, his friends are murdering each other because they have unfinished business left in the outside world. So when he finds out that the outside world doesn't exist, he realizes that everyone he's wanted to protect killed for no reason. He certainly didn't want everyone to know of the horrible truth, but if they didn't learn about it, they would continue to find a way out. The only way he could think of is Kokichi's mercy-killing plan. At least then, if they're dead, they will never know of the truth and will no longer pursue it. Protection isn't always physical protection. He also wanted to mentally protect them, even if it meant going to extremes. Gonta's far more nuanced than you're giving him credit for.
After Miu and Gonta are dead, Kokichi's plans start to make even less sense. Here we finally get what Kokichi's ultimate goal is, end the killing game, which again is the broadest shit goal that everybody is trying to achieve in some way or another.
But when it's Angie's goal, it's fine. When it's Kaede's goal, we should all use her plan to get there. This video reeks of so much bias, it makes me angry.
Even Celeste's goal can be simplified to this. If, everyone else is executed and she wins, the killing game has ended. And while the goal is finally solidified, the actions Kokichi takes don't make any sense. Again, is he trying to save everybody? Then why allow them to see the outside world, make up a bunch of shit about being the mastermind, and drive the class into a state where they were all content to lie in their rooms and rot to death, or were requesting their more murder-savvy classmates to snap their neck? Nobody at all acts like this when they're trying to save people.
What was the one thing the class didn't have any reason in doing when they saw the motive? If you said, have no reason to kill people, you'd be right. If they don't have any motivations to leave anymore, then no one would want to kill each other. Even Maki gives up after Kaito is taken and doesn't take action, meaning Kokichi succeeded in his goal. He stopped everyone from wanting to leave, so he stopped the possibility of murder. Also, no, nobody cracked after Kokichi's revelation. We are explicitly told that the mastermind placed a flashback light so people will regather themselves to try and stop Kokichi. It was the only reason Maki went after him in the first place. She states this after Kaito reveals himself.
Is he trying to end the killing game by getting them all killed? Then why bother with all the redemption shit post-mortem where they try to pass him off as a harmless prankster with Batman's code of ethics? He's not harmless at all, he tried to get the entire class killed!
Oh my god! He made them so depressed they wouldn't kill each other! Why is this not computing with you? This is exactly in line with his goal. He just has an unorthodox way of going about it. He didn't try to get the class killed at all! What are you talking about? The point of Chapter 5 was to save them! You have such a strong bias that it isn't even letting you see a slightly sympathetic part of him. You can't see him as anything but evil, so you assume everything he does is for his own selfish benefit. So when he has a goal like end the killing game to save everyone, you think it's inconsistent. You really have a hard time being open-minded, don't you?
It's just nonsense placed there that pretends Kokichi's character is deep. Just say he was a good boy and all the murder, suffering, distrust, trauma, and bullshit you put everyone through? Forgiven, you're a good boy, did nothing wrong.
God forbid he isn't a completely evil person who has good intentions but a terrible way of going about it. I'll say this again, his motive video wasn't saying that he was a good person. It was showing that his goal, end the killing game, was in line with his own morals. So he stays consistent. The motive video was there to re-evaluate his character, not redeem it.
And then there's the murder plan. Oh boy, the murder plan. Where Kokichi makes absolutely 0 sense. Again, we still don't know what Kokichi's exact goal with End the Killing Game is, and there are problems with both angles. For one, most fans seem to agree that an unsolvable murder was Kokichi's goal all along. The crowd that's like, oh, Kokichi's a baby boy who did nothing wrong, he's a good boy, insisted that Kokichi was creating his plan so that Monokuma wouldn't be able to solve the murder, and thus everyone would be set free because the trial wouldn't be able to reach the correct conclusion.
Just one small problem.
How do you know that Monokuma will just let everyone go if the murder can't be solved? You'd think this is a small oversight, but it really fucking isn't. It's the crux of his plan. The game clearly wants you to see him as a good person, since it spends 20 minutes of the final chapter trying to redeem his corpse. But nothing indicated that if Monokuma couldn't solve the murder, he'd just turn around and say, well, since I don't know who did it, I guess we'll just put all of our plans for the next sequel into the dumpster, fire everybody, and let you all go home to your happy lives. In fact, that'd be fucking nonsensical. More than likely, Monokuma would pick a random culprit, shut down any attempt to refute the claim, and execute that person so the killing game could continue.
Oh boy, I have a lot to go over. So I'm gonna try and make this as concise as possible because there is so much to explain. I'll start with, how did Kokichi know his plan would work? Well, he didn't. He had an educated guess, but he had no way of knowing that it would 100% work. But he had to at least try, especially since he's been planning this since chapter 4. Try to look at this whole thing from Kokichi's perspective. The entire game, Monokuma has done nothing but stick to the rules. He constantly tries to make it interesting, especially proven in chapter 4, and make sure everything is recorded. With all this in mind, he came to the conclusion that they were being watched, and since they were part of a death game, it was probably an audience. Therefore, his plan to end it was to get Monokuma to slip up and show that the game was rigged, and for the game to lose its authenticity. That was the crux of his plan. That's why he left his not a will statement. Just in case his plan failed, he left that note for Shuichi and the others to find to help them stop the mastermind. Now, let me touch on the whole Monokuma would just pick a random culprit and execute them like Kaede point that Aeris makes. Here's the thing, Kaede's death and the revelation Kaito is alive are not in the same ballpark. It all has to do with the viewers of Danganronpa and Monokuma's intentions. Let me explain it this way. Let's imagine Danganronpa as a shady corporation. Let's call it Amaterasu Corporation. Amaterasu has peacekeepers that goes out into town and apprehends criminals. In the eyes of the typical civilians, the peacekeepers are heroes keeping order. However, in actuality, they're arresting people with no leads, just to finish the job quickly and shove everything under the rug. That way, they can keep their positive reputation without doing any of the work. Danganronpa, the show, works the same way. They follow the rules so their audience can assume that the game is completely fair, and everything happening is authentic. However, in reality, Monokuma rigs the game behind the scenes so everything can go his way, which is why he was able to get away with falsely executing Kaede. She tried to commit a murder but failed, so Tsumugi took it as an opportunity to frame Kaede and get the game started. Kaede assumes she did kill Rantaro due to the same weapon being used. With her testimony and no hard evidence for Tsumugi's crime, they are able to get away with it since it all happens in the shadow, behind the scenes where everyone is none the wiser. However, say Monokuma did get the culprit wrong in chapter 5. It would be devastating because that would show how shady he is to the public eye. It would be like if Amaterasu Corporation was caught imprisoning someone innocent. If Monokuma makes that slip up, the viewers will feel betrayed and will stop watching Danganronpa. No one watching means there's no reason to continue the game. So Kokichi's plan would have worked. We know this is most likely the case because Monokuma becomes terrified in Trial 5 when Kaito calls out Monokuma for not knowing the true culprit, meaning that there was substance in that theory. If he could get away with saying someone random was the culprit and move on with the game, it would be pointless to show fear and rely on Shuichi. Okay, I think that is everything. To be honest, this conclusion should not have been this complicated to understand, and I don't blame Aeris for having all these questions. However, this isn't a problem with Kokichi's plan. It's more of V3 not making this point clear at all. Hopefully this explanation will suffice. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments. I will try to clarify what I mean here if you didn't get it.
How I said that Celeste's motivation was clearly laid out for her to see? That she knew exactly what she'd get because Monokuma explicitly promised 10 billion yen to anybody who could get away with the murder and showed her the bills? Kokichi has literally no fucking indication that Monokuma would just let everybody go if the murder were unsolvable for him as well. The plan relies on the fake hope that the people behind Danganronpa play a fair killing game, but that hasn't been true since the first one.
Okay, and how would he know that? How would he know Monokuma wouldn't be a fair judge? He has no indication that this plan won't work. However, I do see where you're coming from, and you're right, he has no idea if this is going to work. It was a desperate attempt that was backed up by a few theories he had. That's why he left all the evidence and anything he found in his room where Shuichi could find it. Just like Celeste, there was no point in keeping it for himself if he was dead, so he left it for the other students. You're acting like this plan wasn't supposed to have its downsides, when Chapter 6 says the opposite. So, you're right, he didn't know if it would succeed. But he at least had to try.
Does nobody remember that Junko slapped her twin sister's corpse into the weed lab so that she could get Kyoko killed off? Does nobody remember that despair, disease, and starvation were literally designed in order to aid AI Junko's plan to kill everyone quickly so they'd revert and become ultimate despair again? The killing game has never been fair!
And how would he know that? He has no idea the other games happened. He's going off the only information he knows. They're being watched, Monokuma's stingy with rules, and the game has to be interesting. Put all that together, and you can see where he's coming from. He doesn't know about the game being rigged, so he assumes that Monokuma has been nothing but fair. Stop looking at his plan from the player's point of view, and instead, look at Kokichi's point of view. There was absolutely no way he could know all of that. He doesn't have all the answers like you seem to think he does. We only know better because we played Danganronpa and watched the final trial, but Kokichi would have no way of finding any of this out. It's why he left his not-a-will letter, in case the plan didn't succeed.
Hell, even in this game, Kaede wasn't Rantaro's killer, and yet she was still executed for a crime she didn't commit in the end. Now you might argue, well, Kokichi doesn't know about the previous killing games, but we don't actually have that evidence that he didn't. In fact, the evidence points to him indeed knowing about the previous killing games.
What? No, he didn't! If Kokichi knew about the other games and how Monokuma was unfair, why would he make that the crux of his plan? You're actively making it not make sense because of your dumbass implications that make no sense. While Kokichi probably knew there were more episodes or seasons due to him knowing they were being watched by people, there is absolutely no way for him to know what was happening during them. Do you think he just has fucking telepathic powers where he can just predict every little thing? If he didn't know the content of the episodes themselves, then it would be impossible for him to know Monokuma plays dirty. I can't stress enough how much I laughed when I first heard this. Fucking ridiculous.
Now, it's entirely possible that the motives for the 3rd and 4th chapters of Danganronpa 2 were not mentioned in past Danganronpa events. But do you seriously mean to tell me that the book would be able to mention Mukuro Ikusawa and the circumstances of her murder without looking a little suspicious that the murder case wasn't actually fair at all? Because I don't buy that for a single second! So, that completely trashes the idea of Kokichi intending to save everybody, because this was a complete sham of a plan to do that relied entirely upon luck and the showrunners not wanting to murder teenagers. Which, given the entire premise of the show is to let teenagers murder each other, fucking really?
Oh, you were talking about the book about Danganronpa's history, found in Kokichi's lab, that he would have no access to because it was only accessible after he was dead. He didn't know shit. Monokuma just planted it in his lab where if he were to survive, he would have seen it. So, I was right earlier. You have no idea what order these events took place. Also, no, he was trying to save everyone. While his plan was put together on a pretty risky theory, that doesn't mean he made it to hurt his classmates. It was the best he could do with the information he had.
So, what about the other angle? The angle where Kokichi is an immoral bastard trying to end Danganronpa by making the Season 3 ending a mass execution.
This is not a perspective you can even look at because this was never his intention. Just because you're too blind to realize this doesn't mean that it isn't the case. His plan was to save everyone. End of story. There are no other angles, and this certainly isn't one. Dear God, you really think he's nothing but evil, huh? Whatever. I've suffered through your other terrible theories. What's one more?
Sure, it would raise a mild stink online among fans who are invested in these characters' arcs, and just watch them all get mercilessly crushed. But there's always going to be a community that would find this ending to Season 3 as the breath of fresh air the series needed. For 52 seasons, hope triumphed over despair. For 52 seasons, the mastermind has always been Junko Enoshima. Season 53 would be the first season when none of that happens, where the mastermind remains a mystery, You can assume it'd be Junko, but you'd never be sure. And hope triumphing over despair? Forget it. And it would cause waves in the fanbase, likely skyrocketing Danganronpa more into popularity than ever before. You know, exactly what Kokichi didn't want. As an example as to how much a change can actually shake up a show, remember in the Hunger Games when Peter and Katniss were the first dual winners of the Hunger Games in their 74-year history?
Stop! Stop! May I present the winners of the 74th Annual Hunger Games.
Where every game before them had only had one victor, including the second quarter quell with 48 contestants. How everybody was talking about the star-crossed lovers from District 12. How it led to the fall of Panem. The exact same thing would happen with Danganronpa. Season 53 would be a shock, but it would be talked about for years to come. You see what I mean when I say his actions don't serve his goal and his motives are flimsy? Given how he's supposed to be characterized as intelligent, I fail to see how Kokichi wouldn't have thought of this.
Alright, so let's say that you're right, that Kokichi's plan all along was to murder everyone left and have a different ending compared to the rest of the games. What does this do for Kokichi? How does having a different ending and the audience go, wow, season 53 really made things fresh for Danganronpa, do for him? Nothing. He's dead. Are you saying he wanted the gratification? He wanted to look cool to the audience? Well, that would make no sense since he literally cursed out the people watching the show in the first place. I guess we're assuming that was a lie then? The reason this makes no sense is because you're making it not make sense. You're picking and choosing what you understand about him and throwing away any possibility that he might have good intentions. You don't seem to get that he can have a morally good goal, but a morally bad way of going about it. Why do you think his motif is black and white? It's because he represents duality, the yin and yang of Danganronpa characters, if you will.
Kokichi's plan makes absolutely no sense, and it relies on luck and shit he would literally need Clairvoyance to have the foresight to do. Like the little book of bullshit he hands Kaito as he's dying of poison to impersonate him perfectly at the trial. His plan also relies on him being able to correctly predict everybody's actions precisely, and also relies on people doing things he doesn't expect. Where am I? I'm quite sure I've made my point pretty clear.
No, he isn't a clairvoyant genius, nor lucky. You're just making him look like it by saying he has information that would have been impossible to obtain. I already explained that point, but I just have to say, I know I mentioned that you don't understand him at all, but at this point you understand him so little that you're giving him traits he never had. That's why he makes no sense. Anyway, the only computer in the academy is revealed in Chapter 4. Maki is established as the only one who knows how to use it, and there's no printer. Kokichi would need to handwrite in the book, which would take weeks. He would literally need to know every circumstance that would lead to this week's in advance. This is impossible. You're assuming that he knew beat for beat what was going to happen, but he didn't. First, let's start off with the book of bullshit, as you call it. He doesn't need a computer nor a printer because he could just find an empty book in the library. I'm sure that exists. Also, it's so evident that you have no idea what the timeline is. I explained earlier that this specific plan would start around the end of Chapter 3. That would give him plenty of time to write out what would happen. As for the content, we don't know what's in the book at all, just that he wrote it to give Kaito dialogue to work with. However, what you failed to mention is that Kaito had to improv during the trial, meaning that Kokichi didn't predict every conversation that was going to happen. Hell, he probably didn't mention anything about the poison and Kaito had to go off script. So while I can't exactly disprove what you're saying with hard evidence, I could say that your interpretation of events is most likely not the case. Also, for that screenshot of his dialogue, that is completely unrelated. Sure, it did prove that Kokichi is observant and is able to predict students at times. However, this does not show how much he can predict. Plus, that scene was pretty predictable considering everything that happened in the fourth trial. Why wouldn't they not trust him and tell him to beat it after offering to leave one person alive? That wasn't really impressive on Kokichi's part. I guess except to you.
Celeste's plan, sound and good. Kokichi's plan, nonsensical and terrible.
Kokichi's plan, very well thought out and brilliant. Celeste's plan, stupidly obvious and time-wasting. See? I can do it too.
There is one more thing to examine, and it's what the two characters have in common. It's something you all know! It begins with an L!
Lesbian.
Yes, liars!
Both Celeste and Kokichi are known for being liars, but ask yourself this question: why are they liars? Celeste's purpose for being a liar, aside from being a minor foil to Kyoko Kirigiri in much the same way Togami is Naigi's foil, is to serve her persona, as well as serve a reveal that is, for many people, both shocking and makes complete sense. However, Kokichi's only purpose as a liar is to be blatantly thematic. His job is to stand there and yell, "Look at me! I'm a liar! And Shuichi's a detective! We're character foils to one another! I act like a dick 99% of the time! I get redeemed post-mortem for no reason whatsoever! Please love me, I need to make rent, the divorce with my second-in-command of Dice has been finalized and I have 7 kids to feed."
So 99% of that statement I've already debunked, so I'm just gonna focus on the why does Kokichi lie point. He lies to hide his true feelings. Throughout the game, he pretends he's enjoying it in order to fool the mastermind when, in actuality, he hates the game with a passion. He lies because that's what makes him the most comfortable. He doesn't trust anyone around him, so telling the truth would break down whatever walls are still standing. Due to this constant lying, he's able to obscure what he actually thinks, even when he tells the truth, since everyone assumes he's lying anyway. His lies are to hide his true intentions, in order to make himself look like the bad guy. That's why he lies.
What happened? What happened to the subtlety of the themes? How Nagi and Togami weren't blatantly stated to be foils of one another, and the game didn't hammer in, "Do you get it? Nagi is the working class and Togami is the millionaire-billionaire class, and the upper class has no regard for anyone below them. Togami is a criticism of the mega-rich, and he is only redeemed when that money is stripped from him and he must rely on his skills." Sure, that was kinda mentioned, but you were left to realize that for yourself.
None of these themes were hammered into the player. You just think that because you think Kokichi is a foil to Shuichi, which he isn't. Working with your logic, that means Komaeda is a character who does nothing but repeatedly hammer in the hope versus despair theme of the game because it's a major part of his personality. Do you see how stupid your point is now?
What happened to the subtle lying? The lies that I enjoyed getting wrapped up in. How there was the occasional blatant lie used to brilliant effect to make people feel smart for picking it up, while a less blatant lie slipped under the radar.
Yeah, let's just pretend the first trial didn't happen. But since I know you're talking about Celeste and Kokichi, let's be honest here, Kokichi has the better constructed lies. Like I said earlier, his lies are a maze. Just because he says he's lying or agrees with someone saying he's lying doesn't mean he actually is. Well, true, his lies aren't subtle, that doesn't make it a bad thing. As for Celeste, there is only one subtle lie she tells. It's when we believe that Hifumi was dead. This is also brought up in the trial itself. Other than that, every lie that is told is called out by Makoto. There is nothing subtle for the player there.
This is Kokichi Ouma's truth? Yep. There's no truth to Kokichi Ouma. The closest we get is, he's a funky little prankster in Dice who does harmless pranks and never wanted to kill ever. Except the game directly contradicts this. We never see Dice, beyond that one photo. We never see Kokichi Ouma's no-killing code. We do not see that Kokichi. For all intents and purposes, it does not exist. That truth is another lie. A human cannot function without truth. Even if it is a subjective truth, there must be some kind of truth. A human cannot function as purely lies. This is where Kokichi fails as a character, and people Emperor's New Character it up with him. He has no truth. He's only lies. He must be brilliant. No. Anybody with access to Notepad and enough brain cells to lie can write a character that is nothing but lies with no true motivations beneath it. This does not make a character good. In fact, this is extremely pretentious. Kokichi is the most pretentious character I've come across in any medium, and I studied tertiary creative writing for 4 years. I've seen some pretentious bullshit. Celeste and Kokichi are both nothing without their lies, but for entirely different reasons and ultimatums. Celeste without her lies is Taiko Yasuhiro, a poor forgotten soul with unnatural luck and observational skills, and a name that literally means cheap. A boring nobody with nothing interesting whatsoever. A hot-headed individual who despises the world and almost everybody around her, who took on the identity of Celestia Ludenberg in order to inject meaning, life, anything interesting into her world. If it didn't work, Celeste could have easily been in the exact same position as Junko Enoshima. She was startlingly close to sharing Junko's motivations. Celeste without her lies is kneecapped as a person, but Taiko Yasuhiro still exists to pick up that slack as a character. Kokichi Ouma without his lies is nothing. Not like Celeste, where she has nothing. Kokichi is nothing. Without lies, Kokichi Ouma ceases to be anything at all. Without Shuichi, Kokichi ceases to be anything at all. Kokichi relies on Shuichi, or on any character that represents truth or trust, in order to actually function for more than a single scene. Without that character present, Kokichi completely falls apart. He is a completely dependent character that is unable to stand on his own 2 feet. Kabaida's philosophy on hope allows him to stand on his own 2 feet without Hajime, without Chiaki, without Junko. Junko's philosophy on boredom and despair allows her to stand on her own 2 feet without Makuro, without Makoto, without Izuru. Angie's philosophy on a peaceful life under God allows her to stand on her own 2 feet without Shuichi, without Tenko, without Himiko. Without Shuichi, Kaito, and Maki, Kokichi crumbles.
So that was a lot. I cut out as much as I could that didn't pertain to my point, but I needed to put as much context as possible. Here's the thing, Aeris. Kokichi does have a truth. Sure, he doesn't have a deep backstory, but like I said earlier, he didn't need one. The real Kokichi, the one buried behind a mountain of lies, is just a kid who wants to have fun with his friends. A kid who commits petty crimes with a super evil organization. You say we never see that Kokichi, but we do. The school mode. There's a reason why I said it wasn't pointless. It's there to show who he is with no killing game, no pressure, no extreme paranoia, and most of all, no reason to lie to himself about everything being under control. In those times we see him with Shuichi, we see who he truly is. A kid. You say he can't stand on his own without Shuichi, Kaito, or Maki, but he does. His philosophy of lying for a good reason and his constant distrust for others, his determination to reach his goal, his selflessness to try and save people, and his duality as a person allows him to stand on his own 2 feet. He isn't just purely lies. If that were the case, we wouldn't get that 5th trial. If he were nothing but lies, then he would have no reason to try and help Shuichi after he's dead. He doesn't follow his own no-killing policy? He does. Don't you realize his desperate attempts to stop the killing game? Don't you realize his hatred of Maki and her talent? You can't use the 4th trial because he wasn't able to make another choice. But even though that was the case, he still felt terrible for dragging Gonta along. His humanity is his truth. You stated earlier that you hate liars, that you think you should face a cruel truth than live in a beautiful lie. However, that doesn't line up with either of your videos. You have done nothing but lie to yourself about Kokichi and his characterization just because you don't like him. Aeris Akamatsu, your lens of truth had been fogged by your hatred and bias of this character. You refuse to face that cruel truth and instead, you choose to bask in your own beautiful lie. Well, that sucked. Thank everyone who watched this video in its entirety, my friends and family for help with the creating process, and HazeSoul for being my inspiration. Oh, and of course I can't forget to thank Aeris as well. Without you, this video wouldn't be possible. The future of this channel is in the air, but I do have a lot of ideas I can't wait to make a reality. Although I can assure you that none of them will be as agonizing to make as this video was, and no, not just because of Aeris. Anyway, this video is over. Bye.